One of the biggest challenges on many farms across the United States is high magnesium. Now, magnesium is a nutrient that is important in crop growth. Crops need lots of magnesium, but the problem is when a field has too much magnesium in it, then it can absolutely hurt the drainage, it hurts the porosity in the soil, and ultimately it means lower yields.
You know, with everything when it comes to plant food, we need balance. We can't have way too much of one thing and not enough of another. And you may say, well, I've got lots of everything. Well, you can still have a problem if you have way too much of one particular nutrient. And magnesium can be a challenge, especially in the soil, as Brian kind of outlined here, because it's such a small particle.
Now, if you're testing your soil, what we're looking for here is not necessarily a certain parts per million. What we are looking for is a ratio of magnesium to many of the other nutrients in soil. So that's why we encourage you to get a base saturation test run on your field. And when you do that, we'd like to see that magnesium number in the range of 12% to 25%. Now, ideally, I'd like it to be in the 12 to 18% range, but even if you're up to 25%, it's probably not that bad. But we literally have some soils on our farm that have been 40% or 50% magnesium. And when that happens, we have tight soils, poorly drained, plus the fact that it ties up a lot of the potassium and some of the other nutrients, so we just can't get those into plants.
I was just going to go there with the potassium thing, and we talk to farmers all across the country that say, well, this particular ground will do very well raising this crop, but not so well raising this crop. And in our area, there's a lot of guys that are raising corn and soybeans. And what we'll commonly hear is, you know, this is good corn ground, but I can't raise a decent soybean crop. And one of the big reasons is this potassium availability. With corn, it takes a little bit of potassium all the way through the growing season. Just a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. With soybeans, they want almost all of their potassium in a very short time period, right during the reproductive stages. So they're trying to pull it all in really fast. And in high magnesium soils, it's impossible for that crop to pull enough potassium in to get the really high yields.
So here's what we encourage you to do. If you have tremendously high magnesium in your field, we want you to haul lime out there. Now you might say, well, my pH is above 7. I don't want to haul lime out. Until you get that calcium percentage above 60 or 65%, you need lime. I don't care if your pH is high. It's not going to go up any higher than it is just because you have lime out there. Lime does not automatically raise pH, especially in a high pH soil. So we want you to haul lime out there, and then if you need to, you can haul some gypsum out there in addition to that. The reason why we want the gypsum out there is that extra sulfate in the gypsum can bind with the magnesium, and as long as you have drainage corrected in your field, so if you have tile out there and you get some normal rainfall, you can get that magnesium to combine with the sulfate to form what's called Epsom salts. And salts are leachable. So you get the Epsom salts to flush out of your soil. You raise the calcium by putting lime out there and gypsum out there. You lower the magnesium just because you put more calcium out there and because you're going to combine some of that magnesium with sulfate and leach it out of the field.
Now, when we're looking at this, again, this is a balance situation. So we're trying to remove something that's too high, also increase something that's too low at the same time. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's one of those situations where...
And this is one of the things, Darren, that I
was just going to say, we hear people all the time say, I can't fix a high soil pH and I can't fix a high magnesium percent soil. And we disagree with both of those points.
Well, the high magnesium soil you can fix, I mean, literally in a couple of years. It's not that big a deal. If you just put enough lime out there and you put enough gypsum out there.
It is a big deal because when we look at this, it's going to take an investment. It's going to take a pretty decent size
Like on
investment.
our farm, it's $100 to $150 an acre. Okay, so ground around here is selling for $7,000 to $10,000 an acre. Do I mind putting $100 or $150 in there to get it so it to some degree fixes the soil, so I have better porosity, so I have better drainage, so I have better root growth? That's not a big investment in my book.
Well, again, it's one of those things that's different from what your grandpa did or your dad did on your ground, and probably something, if you've been farming 20 or 30 years, that you may never have done on this ground, because there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to soils. A lot of times we hear guys say, well, you know, this is my tight, poorly drained soil. My pH is high, it's 7.5, 8, 8.5. I can't put lime out there. Well, if you can't put the lime out there, you can't fix the problem. You need to put the lime out there and not worry about what that pH is, because it's, again, like Brian had mentioned, it's not going to mess up that pH. But we need that calcium out there desperately to try and get this situation turned around. Sure, once we get that calcium percent in the base saturation up high enough, we can use something like gypsum and be very effective with that calcium in the sulfate portion. But again, it just takes a different mindset than what you've had before. And if you're scared to try it, do things like we do on our farm. We'll take a part of a field and just run a trial in that part of the field, compare it to where we don't. We noticed right away when we started putting lime into these high magnesium soils, the soil was looser. It was softer. I could take my tile spade and just shove it right in the ground, in this ground that normally was as hard as concrete in the middle of the summer. We were seeing big differences there. Then we started seeing slight differences on yield right off the bat. But like Brian said, it just takes a few years here. You can turn this thing around and make that soil be productive too.
So once again, if you do have high magnesium soils, there absolutely is a fix. We encourage you to get lime out there and get gypsum out there. And over time, you're going to be able to take care of this problem. It just depends on how much you want to invest today, or if you want to spread that investment out over a few years. But we encourage you to get after this thing because it absolutely is a problem in crop production.
Well, the best thing about improving your soils, besides raising bigger crops, is it also helps us fight off competition from weeds. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?